Here on Geetsly's, we like to think of ourselves as Star Wars enthusiasts. Over the years, we've posted almost 1,000 videos on Star Wars lore, covering topics that range from starships to unknown Sith Lords to weird and wacky creatures. With so many years of research under our belts, you'd think we know everything there is to know about Star Wars, but you'd be dead wrong. Truly, Star Wars goes so deep that, no matter how long you spend learning about it, there'll always be something new to discover. In today's video, we gathered 3 of the most obscure pieces of Star Wars lore we could find. This isn't just your average list of obscure facts that you probably knew already. No, for this video, we dug greedily and we dug deep. The entries we found today are things we've never heard of, and hopefully you'll be just as intrigued and appalled as we were.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
What's white and red and pink all over? No, it isn't Anakin Skywalker after he took a bath in lava. Meet the Jeby, a friendly, cheerful creature that lived on the planet Rainbow in the Hapes cluster on the Hapen Rim worlds. As the name implies, Rainbow was striated with earth that matched every color of the rainbow. In this landscape, the Jeby fit right in. They had scaly white bodies covered in pink or red spots, 4 thin legs covered in red and white stripes, and 3 heads, each on the end of a long, thin neck. Even their necks were colourful, as each had 2 unique colour combinations, such as red and yellow or green and blue. On top of each round head was a single black hair. Instead of arms, they had 12 long, banded tentacles, 6 on either side of their peculiar bodies. If you think the Jeby looked bizarre, their strange biology doesn't end there. They were very jovial creatures and enjoyed playing with others. When they laughed, which was often, their whole body would shake, which caused all their colourful spots to fall to the multicoloured ground below. To regain their spots, the Jeby had to meticulously suck them up using their 12 tentacles, then reattach them to their body. Now, you might be wondering where in Star Wars media this creature even appeared. It was actually created by 7-year-old Paul Rice in 1996 for Star Wars Galaxy Magazine's Design an Alien contest. While the Jeby's sentience may be questionable, its canon status isn't. Star Wars continuity editor Leland Shee has made it clear that all content published in the Design an Alien competition is firmly recognized within the canon timeline. Their homeworld, Rainbow, is even in the Essential Atlas, which was published by Jason Fry and Daniel Wallace in 2009. For a little extra flavor, here's a reinterpretation of the Jeby by Mibs, one of our viewers. This might make the Jeby the cutest tentacled creature of Star Wars. There are many more entities out there, however, and most of them were far less innocent. A huge number of organizations could be found throughout the galaxy, each unique to the culture that birthed them. From the Jedi Order to the Yuuzhan Vong, each organization left their own mark on the galaxy. But few marks were as dark and nihilistic as the Sorcerers of Rhand. This cult was born on the planet Rhand from 3 faiths that came together over thousands of years: the Knell of Muspili, the Warriors of Shadow, and the Kanzai Exiles. The Knell of Muspili, which was founded in the Ganinga Gap in the unknown regions over 200,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, was, to put it simply, a death cult. Its followers hoped to use the dark rituals of the Tyrannic Codex, a powerful dark side artifact, to summon apocalyptic deities from beyond the shadows. That was the name of a realm in the Force where Force sensitives went after separating their mind from their body. The Codex was destroyed during the Mershantra extinction around 100,000 BBY, but the cultists had the foresight to transcribe its contents and continued their dark pursuits. The second group, the Warriors of Shadow, was an all-female cult that had broken away from the Tong civilization after the Zhel drove them from their homeworld, Notron. The sisterhood's purpose was to seek atonement through meditation. Finally, the third group, the Kanzai Exiles, was another religious cult. Led by the Lord Ravager Corman Lao, they constructed a world-sized temple close to the Vatalu Rift. To expand their faith, they relied on mentally enslaving new followers. Over the course of thousands of years, these 3 groups formed the Sorcerers of Rhand. The Knell and the Warriors of Shadow were the first to meet in a battle above an unnamed moon in the unknown regions. Over time and through exposure, they became one with the Kanzar exiles, merging into a single cult. This new cult, the Sorcerers of Rhand, ruled the Nihil retreat. They were a particularly zealous cult that worshipped destruction. According to their faith, destruction was the only true power. Destruction was the will of the universe. Although Force sensitive, the cult didn't believe in the power of the Force. Instead, they worshipped the dark, whose will they feverishly served. To the Rhandites, destruction left behind a void in the universe which lay the foundation of truth. As part of their religious devotion to spread destruction across the galaxy, the Rhandites sought to utilize the Canal of Muspelli's goals. Around the time of the Clone Wars, they sent one of their members, Kronal, to locate the remnants of the shattered Tauranic Codex so they could summon apocalyptic deities. Kronal indeed managed to reassemble the Codex, but he didn't remain with the Rhandites for long. After the fall of the Republic, Kronal left the Sorcerers of Rhand to become the prophet of the dark side, and then an Emperor's hand under Emperor Palpatine. But as crazy as this death cult was, they were far from the strangest beings to strive for the extermination of all life in the galaxy. That honor goes to our final entry. When a species is named after the ancient Greek Ferrier of the Dead, you can just bet that they're a lovable bunch. The Charon were a species with human and arachnid characteristics in an arrangement similar to a centaur, if that centaur were bottom half spider, top half man. 4 hairy legs supported their large spider abdomens, and 4 hairy arms extended out of their grey torsos. Their heads were also spider-like with bulbous, slit-eyed pupils and mandibles extending either side of their small mouths. Although they originated from real space, a term for the known galaxy, after the Rift disaster, they were warped to other space where they found a new homeworld. Other space was a dimension outside real space and hyperspace. Although it seemed to contain nothing but grey emptiness, nebulae and stars were both found within it and described as shining holes of darkness. Just because it wasn't entirely empty, that doesn't mean it was hospitable. The Charon's new homeworld was a cold, depressing wasteland surrounded by black holes. The latter were powerful enough to consume all light, making their home dark and miserable. The worst part, however, was that the black holes were gradually pulling the Charon's new homeworld into themselves. Given their rather dismal living situation, perhaps the Charon's outlook on life was somewhat understandable. You see, the Charon followed a cult that believed all life, even their own, was an abomination. This cult, which was called the Cult of Death and led by the Prophet of the Void, believed it was the Charon's holy duty to accelerate the demise of every living being to return them to the void of death. Under the cult's influence, the Charon were cruel, violent, and emotionless beings who saw others' free will as blasphemy. Even after the Charon developed a star drive, they didn't do the obvious thing and escape their dying planet. Instead, they used it to spread through other space, bringing their mad cult with them and wiping out every living being they encountered on the way. Mercifully, they never developed a hyperdrive and were thus unable to leave other space. Imperial scientists during the New Republic era believed that, had they managed to re-enter real space, a war far more devastating than the Galactic Civil War would have begun, similar to the destruction the Yuuzhan Vong inflicted on the galaxy. Despite their confinement to other space, some in the galaxy had heard of the Charon. Stories about terrible monsters circulated through the Outer Rim, which portrayed the Charon as evil abominations to be avoided at all costs. Very few, however, had ever heard of them, a happy side effect of the Charon's propensity for massacring all life forms they encountered. Things changed for the Charon just before the Battle of Endor in 4 ABY. A splinter group that opposed the death cult had formed and secretly constructed the Charon's first hyperdrive. Thanks to this technology, this splinter cult, named the Cult of Light, managed to escape other space in search of a new life. This brought new hope to their species, many of whom were sick of the hopelessness of their existence. The Cult of Light sought an uninhabited world where the Charon could start a new life of peace with the greater galaxy. Many became bioscientists, developing new bioorganic technology that could serve their species. The strangest story about the Charon, however, involved one prophet of the void named Bur Asko and the Imperial Grand Moff Ravik. Around 3 ABY, the Moff was captured by the Rebel Alliance. After a struggle to escape, he made the critical error of sabotaging the ship's hyperspace drive, which yeeted the Rebel vessel into other space. There, he was captured by the Charon and experimented upon until he became a monstrous half-human, half-Charon abomination. To survive, he crafted an alliance with Barasco and his followers. At this time, the Prophet was in the middle of a campaign to eradicate the last remaining life in their dimension. After learning about real space, however, and of all the throngs of life that inhabited it, Barasco undertook the duty of annihilating every last living being there. With Ravik's help, the Charon entered real space. Ravik, however, who had gone insane, seized his opportunity to take over Barasco's body and prepared a suicide attack on the galaxy itself. Barasco took control of the body of a human male named Bane Nothos and helped the Rebel Alliance fight back against Ravik's invasion. The two, once Prophet and Grand Moff, ended up dealing fatal blows to one another, thus ending the Charon threat to the galaxy. Death cults, black hole infested pocket dimensions, and body swapping. There's certainly no end to the list of why the Charon were one of the evilest species of the galaxy that no one has ever heard of. But what do you think? Did you already know about any of today's entries? What's the most obscure Star Wars fact that you know? Please share them in the comments section below because we'd love to read them. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.